Hello everyone, I am Cyril, welcome back to a new video. I want to go through my latest updates. So what's different? Durations argument is no longer mandatory. Also, we now can choose the output format, so if we want a per voice type of output or a per chord type of output. And also we can choose to enforce a unison prohibition. So if you don't like unisons on your chords, you can set this to true. Why did I do that? Because I was experimenting with arpeggiated chords and realized that unisons don't really work on arpeggiated chords. So I thought I'd do this. This wasn't a really difficult change to make. So if we go over to harmonize or to dictionaries, all I did was to add an additional rule flag. So enforce unison prohibition, which is by default set to false. And then on harmonizer, once we run the main function, the main, so to speak, harmonizeProg, uni gets assigned to enforce unison prohibition. Then, during backtrack, when chords are getting checked for full validity, this little function enforces the rule. So this is check voice spacing. Check voice spacing determines whether or not the spacing between each one of the voices is within a valid range. So for spacing between bass and tenor, that can go all the way to 2 octaves. Then all other two, so tenor alto and alto soprano, it can go over an octave. This function also enforces voice cross prohibition. So how does it work essentially? So this works by subtracting the MIDI note value from one note to that of the note below. And if that note goes, if the difference of this subtraction goes to 0, then that means we have a unison between the voices. What I'm doing now with this new rule, enforce unison prohibition, is specifying that if this enforcement is set to true, then the interval can't go any lower than 1, which means a minor second. Also, if it goes beyond 0 into a negative register, then we have a voice cross, and that's what this does. Okay, so this was my first alteration. So the other one was the output format. So what do I mean by chord per chord type of output or per voice type of output? So we have this progression, and if we run this, sorry, not this, okay, let me clear and go through this again. Okay, so this is a per voice type of output, meaning that each subarray is a voice. So this would be the bass, and this would be the tenor, and this would be the alto, and this would be the soprano. This is the only type of output that really requires duration information, because as we see here, we have a 2, we have this with 1s, but here we have a 2 and here we have 2 2s, and that's because it's sustaining common tones. So this is actually a note that has been given twice the duration. But So what happens now? And now let's see the chord type of output. And here we only have chords, we don't have durations. And we have first chord, all voices, second chord, all voices, third chord, all voices, fourth chord, all voices, and so on. So depending on what you're doing, it might come in handy to either go for a per chord type of output or a per voice type of output. I realized that when I was experimenting with arpeggiated chords, and yeah, I realized that you can't really produce that type of effect on a per voice type of output. It gets really difficult. It's much easier to have this. Um, so okay, so what else? So the duration now is not mandatory if you don't pass in a duration and if you're using a per voice type of output. What the program does is to assign um, an array with ones with the same length as that of the progression. So that took a few changes over in init data. So if duration is nil and out equals voice, then it generates an array with ones to be used as durations. If not, then duration simply gets assigned whatever goes into the argument duration. And yeah, we have a little warning here. So obviously, if you're hoping to sustain common tones, it doesn't really make sense to try to sustain common tones when you have a progression size of only one. So what this does simply is it prints out a warning. Warning sustain is not applicable to progressions of size 1 and will be set to false, and sets the sustain to false. Otherwise, sustain will get whatever you pass on as argument. So those are the main differences here. Let me see. Obviously, because there are additional arguments, I had to make a few changes to the validator functions that test the arguments. So we now have a test output format to check whether or not output is kind of symbol, because it only takes symbols. And if it's a valid output, meaning input, meaning it's either chord or voice. So valid output includes out. So it's checking whether this set includes whatever was passed in as argument. If it does not include, then it means then it means it's not valid. We can test this. So let's say line. Okay, we get an error message saying, okay, so I got a little, it wasn't meant to. Let me check this real quick. Aha, I forgot to format out. Okay, so function. So I'm sorry about that. So if we run this now, format. Did I misspell it? No. No, I need to assign this to the string. Okay. A function, let's see, it should work fine now. So, okay, we got an error message. Line is not a valid output format. Try chord or voice. I'm sorry about that. I missed this little bit. But yeah, so I'm constantly making changes. So and I try to keep track as much as I can of every little implication that each of the changes have. But sometimes I skip little things like this. Okay, so what else? So obviously the duration testing had to change a little bit. So if duration is not nil, then we test whether progression and duration are not empty, and we test whether progression and duration are of the same size. But this only if duration is not nil. And also we run additional tests on duration. So test durations, we have it here, and it tests its kind of array, its kind of number. So it may take a float, it may take an integer, and values inside array have to be bigger, can't be bigger than 0. So if any of the values is lesser than or equal to 0, then we get an error. Duration value must be greater than 0. Yeah, and uni is now on the boolean test part of the function. So is kind of boolean or not. Uni blah blah blah. We can give this a little test. If I turn this into a symbol and run it, yeah. Okay. I need to change this back to voice because this test is done before the other one. Parameters, uni, sustain, score and logger, uni, sustain, score and logger must be of type boolean. Okay, so we got the other error because of the sequence of the tests. So duration is tested before the tests over the boolean arguments. So it's gonna pick up that error first before moving on. Line is not a valid output format. Try chord or voice. It's gonna pick up that error before it moves on to the other tests. Voice. Okay, parameters, uni, blah blah blah. Yeah. Yes. Through. Okay, and we get it. Okay, so here we have a few tests. So voice will work as usual. And chord. Okay, let's see if we can try to spot a unison. I know there is a unison on this progression when this is set to false, and we can check that real quick. Here we have it on the third chord. We have the alto and the soprano both playing C4, so a 60. And if we play this, you can hear it on the third chord. There's that very slight repetition. So that's what I didn't really like. Hence me making this change. So we don't have unisons now. Just as a for fun, let's try playing them together. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it wasn't too messy. This was just simply meant to be a quick update on my latest changes to Harmonizer 01. As always, if you have any opinions, any critiques, any things you like, things you don't like, all of that, make sure to leave a comment. I would really appreciate that. And if you enjoyed the video, give a like, subscribe, all of that stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.